Barn lights have had a classic look since early in the last century. Mounted on barns, sheds, even poles, they are often green, although black and silver are also common. Casey Berg recently modeled a self-standing Canadian Pacific Railway Type C 1916 electric passenger platform light. Available even today, they come in a variety of styles. We are going to model a standard 14-inch model. We'll use this image as a background image in Blender to shape our model. Open Blender in the Layout workspace and switch to Front View. Import the barn light dimensions image as a background image. Keyboard shortcut, select the Add menu, then Image, then Background, and locate and load the image. Choosing background as opposed to reference means the image will only be visible when you are in front view. In the outline window, name the image Side View Image. Select the cube, and in the 3D Editor window, open the Properties panel and select the Item tab. In the Properties window, select the Scene tab, then Units, and under Unit System, select Imperial. Set the X dimension to 14 inches by entering 14 IN, or 1.17 feet. Toggle on wireframe and X-ray modes. Keyboard shortcut Shift plus the Z key. Select the side view image and scale down the image so that the rim of the light fits the width of the cube. Keyboard shortcut the S key and drag, and to move, the G key and drag. Then delete the cube. This would be a good time to save your work. Save your Blender file as barnlight01.blend. In the toolbar, select the Cursor tool and set the cursor at the top of the shade. Add a cylinder. And in the Options window, set the vertices to 16, the radius to 0.04 feet, and the depth to 0.2 feet. Select the cylinder mesh and move it up on the Z-axis to sit on top of the shade. Save your work. Save your Blender file as barnlight02.blend. We are now going to use the Spin tool to shape the central tubing. To do this, we need to first position the cursor at the center of the spin. And to position the cursor, we are going to use a circle. In object mode, add a circle primitive and rotate 90 degrees on the x-axis, then fill. Scale down the circle and move it to outline the left curve of the tubing in the image. Remember, by placing the mouse cursor away from the circle, you have better control of the scaling and movement. If need be, once in place, select the top of the cylinder, keyboard shortcut Shift plus Alt plus left mouse button, and move down on the Z-axis to position horizontal to the circle center. With the circle mesh selected, place the cursor at the center of the circle mesh. Keyboard shortcut Shift plus the S key and select Cursor to Selected. Select the cylinder mesh and the top loop of edges. Keyboard shortcut Shift plus Alt plus left mouse button. In the toolbar, select the Spin tool. Set the axis to Y. Select the lower green X and spin the top of the cylinder mesh until the end points towards the right-hand curve of the tubing. Now extrude the end of the cylinder mesh to the beginning of the next curve. Keyboard shortcut the E key and drag. This is a bit of a trial and error process. If the extrusion does not follow the piping, delete the last action back to the start of the spin and repeat, stopping the spin so as to get the correct angle, then extrude. Once you have the extrusion following the piping, this would be a good time to save your work. Save your Blender file as barnlight03.blend. Now move the circle mesh and align with the right curve of the tubing. Set the cursor to the center of the circle mesh. Keyboard shortcut Shift plus the S key, then select Cursor to Selected. With the Spin tool selected, spin out the second curve, then extrude to the wall mount. Again, this is a trial and error process. When you are satisfied with the result, save your work. Save your Blender file as barnlight04.blend. Next, let's shape the shade. Again, we are going to use the Spin tool, but first we are going to use a Bezier curve and the Pen tool to create the profile. Switch to Top View and Object Mode. Add a Bezier curve. Keyboard shortcut, select the Add menu, then Curve, then Bezier. Switch to Edit mode and delete the vertices. Keyboard shortcut the X key, then select Vertices. Switch back to Front View. In the toolbar, if we select the Pen tool, we can add individual vertices to outline the profile. Note that this tool was added to Blender 3.2, so you need to be using version 3.2 or a later version. Zoom in and start at the left-hand corner of the shade, and add vertices one at a time at the end of each curve and one at the sharp angles. Now with the Pen tool still selected, we can use the left mouse button to shape each segment by selecting the curve in the middle of the segment and dragging. You can delete vertices by selecting and deleting. Keyboard shortcut select the X key, then the V key. You can add vertices by selecting two adjacent vertices, by using the right mouse button to bring up the Curve context menu, then selecting Subdivide. You can align vertices vertically by box selecting the vertices and then selecting the S key, then the X key, typing in 0 and selecting Enter. You can align vertices horizontally by box selecting the vertices and then selecting the S key, then the Z key, typing in 0 and selecting Enter. At the top, box select the two vertices and make the top segment horizontal. You can tweak the profile using the Move tool. Vertices at the curve should have both handles parallel and the bottom handle following the curve. With the vertex selected, select the V key and select Automatic to make the handles parallel. At the sharp angle, the bottom handle should be horizontal and the top handle follow the curve. With the vertex selected, select the V key and select Free to allow you to adjust the handles individually. Once you are satisfied with the curve, in Object mode, select the curve and convert it to a mesh. Keyboard shortcut, select the Object menu, then Convert, then Mesh. Name the mesh Shade. Hide the side view image. In Edit mode and Vertex Selection mode, select the shade mesh and apply Limited Dissolve to reduce the number of vertices. Keyboard shortcut, select the X key, then select Limited Dissolve. Select the top vertex and move to the right side of the tubing. Subdivide the segment and delete the right half to place the end vertex in the center of the tubing. Select the top vertex and extrude downward on the Z-axis. Select the bottom vertex and extrude to the right on the X-axis. Switch to Edge Selection mode. Select the intersecting edges and subdivide at the intersection. Keyboard shortcut, the right mouse button, then select TinyCAD and select VTX Auto. Select and delete the end edge segments. Select the new vertex at the intersection and move the cursor to the selection. Keyboard shortcut Shift plus the S key, then select Cursor to Selected. Now we are ready to apply the spin tool. Switch to Top View and Edit mode, and with the shade mesh selected, select the spin tool. Set to the Z-axis and grab the blue X and rotate. In the Options window, set the steps to 16 and the angle to 360. Switch to Front View. Select the shade mesh and move it down slightly on the Z-axis. Switch to Face Selection mode. Circle select the top faces and delete. Switch to Object mode. Select both the shade mesh and the cylinder mesh and join. Keyboard shortcut Ctrl plus the J key. Switch to Edit mode and Edge Selection mode. Select the top loop of edges of the shade mesh and the bottom loop of edges of the cylinder mesh. Bridge the loops of edges. Keyboard shortcut, select the Edge menu and then select Bridge Edge Loops. Select the top loop of edges of the bridge and dissolve. Keyboard shortcut, select the X key, then select Dissolve Edges. Toggle on wireframe and X-ray modes and select the shade. Unhide the side view image and move the shade back up into place on the Z-axis. This would be a good time to save your work. Save your Blender file as barnlight05.blend. We will now use the same process to shape the mount. Hide the cylinder mesh. Switch to Object mode and Top View and add a Bezier curve. keyboard shortcut, select the Add menu, then Curve, then Bezier. If need be, use the Home key to zoom in on the curve. Switch to Edit mode and delete the vertices. Keyboard shortcut the X key, then select Vertices. Switch back to Front View and zoom in on the mount. In the toolbar, select the Pen tool and add vertices, one at the start and one at the beginning of each of the curves, and one at the sharp angles. Add one on either side of the tubing in the side view image. Align the horizontal vertices. Keyboard shortcut, select the S key, then the Z key, enter 0, and then select Enter. Align the vertical vertices. Keyboard shortcut, select the S key, then the Z key, enter 0, and then select Enter. Now with the Pen tool selected, use the leftmost button to shape each of the segments. Hide the side view image. Once you are satisfied with the curve in object mode, convert it to a mesh. Keyboard shortcut, select the Object menu, then Convert, then Mesh. In Edit mode and Vertex Selection mode, apply Limited Dissolve to reduce the number of vertices. Keyboard shortcut, select the X key, then select Limited Dissolve. In the Options window, increase the max angle as far as you can to remove vertices without adversely affecting the curves. Select the two left vertices and subdivide the segment. Keyboard shortcut the right mouse button and select Subdivide. Delete the bottom vertex so the end of the curve is roughly in the center of the tubing. Select the bottom vertex and extrude to the right on the x-axis. Select the top vertex and extrude downward on the z-axis. Switch to Edge Selection mode. Select the intersecting edges and subdivide at the intersection. Keyboard shortcut right mouse button, then select TinyCAD, then select VTX Auto. Select and delete the end edge segments. Select the new vertex at the intersection and move the cursor to the selection. Keyboard shortcut Shift plus the S key, then select Cursor to Selected. We are now ready to apply the Spin tool. Switch to Top View and Edit mode, and with the mesh selected, select the Spin tool. Set to the Z-axis and grab the blue X and rotate. In the Object window, set the steps to 16 and the angle to 360 degrees. In the toolbar, switch to the Selection tool. Toggle off wireframe and X-ray modes. Keyboard shortcut Shift plus the Z key. For convenience, rename the Bezier curve to Mount. In Object mode, set the origin to the geometry. Keyboard shortcut select the Object menu, then select Set Origin, and select Origin to Geometry. Rotate the mount mesh on the y-axis minus 90 degrees. Unhide the cylinder and move the mount mesh into position on the y-axis. Switch to front view and move the mount into position on the Z-axis. The left side of the mount is a bit small, so let's increase the size. In Edit mode and Vertex Selection mode, with the wireframe and X-ray modes toggled on, select the end segment. Scale on the X and Z axes. Keyboard shortcut the S key, then Shift plus the X key and drag. Select all of the mount mesh. Keyboard shortcut with the mouse cursor hovered over the mesh, select the L key. Drag the mesh to the right. Toggle off wireframe and X-ray modes. Switch to face selection mode. Circle select the center faces and delete. Select the cylinder mesh and delete the end face. In Object mode, select the cylinder mesh and the mount mesh and join. Keyboard shortcut Ctrl plus the J key. In Edit mode and Edge Selection mode, select the left loop of edges of the mount segment and the right loop of edges of the cylinder segment and bridge. Keyboard shortcut select the Edge menu, then select Bridge Edge Loops. If need be, scale the right loop of edges. Select and dissolve the extra loop of edges. Unhide the side view image. Toggle on wireframe and X-ray modes. Select the mount segment and move to the left into position. Rename the cylinder mesh Barn Light. This would be a good time to save your work. Save your Blender file as barnlight06.blend. We now want to separate the inner surface of the shade so we can have it emit the light reflected from a light bulb. To do this, we will separate the bottom of the shade, apply a solidify modifier, and then separate the inner surface. Hide the side view image. Select the bottom of the shade and separate. Keyboard shortcut the P key, then select Selection. Change the name of the new mesh, Barn Light 001, to Shade Bottom. Hide the Shade Bottom mesh and select the Barn Light mesh. In Edit mode and Vertex Selection mode, select the center vertices and delete. Hide the Barn Light mesh and select the Shade Bottom mesh. In Edit mode and Face Selection mode, and with wireframe and X-ray modes toggled off, circle select the bottom faces and delete. Switch to Object mode, and with the Shade Bottom mesh selected, apply a Solidify modifier. Set the thickness to 0.01 and apply. Switch to Edit mode and Face Selection mode. Select the top loop of faces and delete. Switch to Edge Selection mode. Select the inner loop of edges and fill. Extend the selection downward to include all of the inner surface of the shade. Keyboard shortcut Ctrl plus the number pad plus key. Separate the inner surface. Keyboard shortcut the P key, then select Selection. Name the new mesh Shade Inner Surface. Switch to Object mode. Unhide the Barn Light mesh. Select the Shade Bottom mesh. Keyboard shortcut Command plus the left mouse button. Then select the Barn Light mesh. Keyboard shortcut Command plus the left mouse button. And join. Keyboard shortcut Ctrl plus the J key. Hide the Barn Light mesh. Now let's add a light bulb. I am going to have the bulb protrude below the shade. Select the shade inner surface mesh. Switch to Edit mode and Edge Selection mode, and select the bottom loop of edges. Move the 3D cursor to the selected loop of edges. Keyboard shortcut Shift, then select Cursor to Selected. Switch to Object mode and add a UV sphere primitive. Set the segments to 16, the rings to 16, and the radius to 0.15 feet. Move the sphere up on the Z-axis a bit, so it doesn't protrude below the shade quite as much. Name the sphere Bulb. Hide the shade bottom mesh. Switch to Edit mode and Vertex Selection mode, and toggle on Wireframe and X-ray modes. Delete part of the top of the sphere. Switch to Edge Selection mode and select the top loop of edges. Extrude upward and scale inwards to form the neck of the bulb. With snapping turned on and the target set to face project, snap the edges to the top face of the shade's inner surface. Save your work. Save your Blender file as barnlight07.blend. I would like to mount the light on a pole, so let's add a cylinder and shape it into a pole. Hide the bulb mesh and the shade inner surface mesh. Place the 3D cursor at the world origin. Keyboard shortcut Shift plus the C key. In object mode, add a cylinder primitive. Set the vertices to 16, the radius to 0.4 feet, and the depth to 16 feet. In the Properties panel under the Item tab, set the Z location to 7 feet. This will put the bottom of the pole 1 foot underground. You will see why later. Name the cylinder mesh Pole. With snapping toggled off, select the barn light mesh, bulb mesh, and the shade inner surface mesh, and move them to 2 feet from the top of the pole, using the grid as a guide. Let's make a pole mount for the light. To fix the light to the pole, add a cube primitive and size it to x equals 0.1 feet, y equals 0.6 feet, and z equals 0.6 feet. Position it between the pole mesh and the barn light mesh. Let's add some detail to the pole so that it isn't perfectly cylindrical. Switch to Edit mode and add 15 horizontal loop cuts. Keyboard shortcut Control plus the R key, then enter 15 and select Enter twice. In face selection mode, select some of the faces and distort the shape. Not too much. We just want a little irregularity. Don't move the faces that are underground or next to the barn light. Let's clean up our model before saving. Rename the cube mesh Mount. We can join the bulb mesh and the shade inner surface mesh, as we are going to add an emissive texture to both. We can delete the circle mesh as we are done with it. In object mode, select the barn light mesh. Switch to Edit mode and Vertex Selection mode. Select all of the vertices, keyboard shortcut the A key, and delete duplicates. Keyboard shortcut select the Mesh menu, then Clean Up, then Merge by Distance. Switch to Object mode. Select each of the meshes, and if need be, apply rotation and scale. Keyboard shortcut Control plus the A key, then select rotation and scale. Turn on surface orientation. Keyboard shortcut select the overlay chevron, then face orientation. Toggle on wireframe and X-ray modes. Select any faces that are red and flip normals. Keyboard shortcut Alt plus the N key, then select flip. Turn off wireframe and X-ray modes and surface orientation. I think the pole is a bit thick, so let's reduce the diameter. In object mode, select the pole mesh, and in the Properties panel under the Item tab, reduce the X and Y dimensions to 0.6. Apply rotation and scale. Select and move the mount mesh and the barn light mesh back into position. Save your work. Save your Blender file as barnlight08.blend.